Simon, in the world of boxing, what do you know? What do you know? It could well be that Conor Benn is set to fight Chris Eubank Jr. maybe towards the end of January, beginning February, and it could well be the working target for the fight is to be staged at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on either of those dates, maybe January 30 or February 10. Now, many people listening to this luncheon will say, hang on, how can it be that simple? Because this was the Conor Benn who failed not one but two drugs tests. And is it not right that the debate still rages on as to whether or not Benn is at liberty to fight in this country again? So how can we be at the stage we're reportedly at, whereby we're talking about a venue, Simon, and we're talking about one or two of two dates, and we're talking about Ben Eubank Jr. being on virtually weeks away from now?
Well, we know they wanted this fight. And I don't think for legitimate reasons. I think solely and utterly for financial reasons. There's nothing in this fight besides money. And what was once the legacy of two great fighters in their fathers, because both of these fighters, one of them has underachieved in my belief in terms of Eubank Jr. and by not winning a world title, and Conor Benn's at the beginning of his career and he's only starting to get his engines going. And we're fighting at a weight class which Conor Benn's going to have to go up nearly a stone to fight in. It's just a money fight which benefits the fighters' individual pockets, which is what prize fighting is about, of course, and the promoters. The tragedy of all this is if boxing is, we talk about this, you and I and Spencer Oliver and a bunch of people, and I don't want to be self-righteous, but if this is what boxing wants, if it's okay for a fighter to fail a couple of drugs tests, not really have to account for them, to get out from underneath that ability to account for them by using a jurisdiction argument, that VADA, voluntary VADA tests don't fall under the jurisdiction of UKAD, and thus the suspension of his licence or suspension of his ability to fight in this country is now lifted, and everyone's comfortable with that, then boxing deserves everything it gets. It brings itself into disrepute. If the British Boxing Board, there was an appeal launched by the British Boxing Board.
The appeal's still ongoing.
Well, it's not good enough. Why isn't the appeal being brought forward? Why aren't they doing it quicker? It's not fair on Conor Benn that he should have to wait around forever. The argument was advanced that because of the VADA testing, and in the middle of those VADA testing were a couple of UKAD tests that he passed. He failed two VADA tests. He passed UKAD tests. He went to the WBC, who conveniently gave him a solution to his problem, which is a defence. It was eggs, Your Honour. You did too many eggs. He didn't make that argument. He said the equipment was contaminated. The WB said, no, it wasn't, but you've got contaminated eggs. He didn't want that argument. He didn't run that argument when he got in front of the British Boxing Board of Control and the independent anti-doping panel that was put in place to adjudicate the suspension of fighting in this country. He didn't want his licence. He threw his licence away. He tore it up. He didn't want to talk about the things in a rational format. He wanted to go on Piers Morgan and scream and shout and blame corruption and conspiracy theories.
And he said that was wrong. So how have we arrived at this position? I mean, is it right that the promoters are railroading this through? Because that's what it looks like.
Only in the absence of authority. If the British Boxing Board of Control does not deal with this, then what is the point of the British Boxing Board of Control? If this is able to overcome, if the promoters are running the authority of what goes on in this country, then what is the point of Robert Smith and the British Boxing Board of Control?
Well, the same British Boxing Board of Control tell me this lunchtime an appeal is ongoing. That's not good enough.
But it's really not good enough.
That's a message I've just had.
They went into an appeal.
You're listening.
When Conor Benn's lawyers went in there, made their arguments, very clever, very skillful arguments about jurisdiction, got the suspension lifted. Then Eddie Hearn came in and said it was exoneration. Then he had to row back on that because people are not prepared just to be allowed for Eddie to say what he wants these days, and they ask questions about exoneration. Then he pairs it back and says he's been cleared to fight. So the exoneration terminology has gone. We're now into the cleared to fight territory. Then the British Boxing Board of Control with the UK had said, well, we can't have that. We can't have somebody on our shores failing a drug test and we don't have jurisdiction on it. So they're arguing that case. And why it's taking 2 or 3 months is unfair on Conor Benn. But what they're trying to do is to use the court of public opinion and the media to create the downward pressure to be able to make the reasons for this fight to happen and the demands for it to happen and the British Boxing Board of Control to wilt and to take the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is to not
let it happen.
Is to not stop this fight from happening.
Yeah.
The path of substance, the path of integrity, of character, of the right thing to do to the sport is to enforce this appeal, make Conor be accountable to UKAD, and make him explain those tests.
Well, the
And
British
when he
Boxing Board of
explains-
Control tell me we do have other fights and boxing matters to attend to. Hard to believe, but it's true.
But they rightly do. And
Yeah.
it's not the only fight on the radar. But I
Can't
for
be that
one-
difficult to accelerate the appeal.
Well, look at these in sport. Look at these appeals. How long do they take? They take forever because there's legal frameworks going on behind the scenes about who can hear it, when they can't hear it, which witnesses are available, what evidence they want to submit, what the procedures are. They have a hearing before the hearing to establish the order of events and the circumstances in which they're going to be advancing their particular appeal. So it can be convoluted, but for me, it's never been a fight I liked. I didn't like it for Conor before all of this blew up because I thought Conor could go on a different trajectory and win a world title in his own weight class. I don't like it for Chris Eubank Jr. because I just think it's money and I don't think it's reflective of all the noise we've heard from him about winning a world title.
You could argue it's even got bigger now, though.
Well, this is it, isn't it? What does this tell you? All of this admiration I have for this sport and all of this regard for it and all of this desire that may manifest itself sooner rather than later to be involved in it,
Yeah.
I look at this and go, ugh, isn't this ugly? And isn't it steeped in deceit and disingenuity and dishonesty and a lack of integrity? Is this what boxing has become? Two fighters that are trading off the legacy of their fathers, getting paid fortunes for a fight which is a mismatch because of the weight classes and has now turned into an event steeped in notoriety. Wow, that's impressive.